Just a little shy of 10 minutes past 7 Central African time. South Africa has been elected to return to the United Nations Human Rights Council for the 2026-2028 term, rejoining the 47-member body tasked with promoting and protecting human rights worldwide. The vote comes at a moment of heightened global scrutiny over human rights compliance, and as South Africa marks 30 years since the adoption of its democratic constitution, questions are now being asked about the role the country intends to play on the Council and how its constitutional values shape its foreign policy. Joining us now is Chairperson of South Africa's Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation, Supra Mahumapelo. Chairperson, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks to the viewers and listeners.
Thank you. South Africa is returning to the UN Human Rights Council, and this at a time when human rights are under strain in many parts of our continent, including the world. So what role does South Africa see itself playing during this new term?
Firstly, we congratulate South Africa for being given that responsibility again to preside over the Human Rights Commission between now and 2028. What the world must understand is that it doesn't mean that if you are the chairperson of this body, you will be able on your own to resolve the problems that face the world in as far as matters of human rights are concerned. So we fully understand that as South Africa. The most important thing that we know and understand that we have to do as South Africa is to make sure that we galvanize the world to support the approach that we always adhere to of resolving conflict through the means of negotiations, through engagement, and making sure that you develop the economies of the world so that member states are able, from a resource point of view, to adhere to the prescripts of human rights. Because if you don't have the necessary resources to adhere to the prescripts of human rights, for instance, availing basic health services, water, and other amenities like education, you will then be flouting the prescripts of human rights. And therefore, you need the necessary resources. And to have those resources, you need to grow the economies. To grow the economies, you need stability. To have stability, you need cooperation. To have cooperation, you have to belong to the multilateral bodies which South Africa is part of. So we will always, as South Africa, promote the importance of multilateral bodies, which promotes nations coming together to resolve problems facing humanity.
So where currently does the Council fall short, as you see it, as you mentioned those points that are needed to achieve international human rights or to ensure that international human rights are not violated?
The problem is not the Council itself, which is the institution. Part of the challenge emanates from member states among the 47 affiliated to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Some of them, yes, they are affiliated to the Human Rights Council, but they do not respect and adhere at all material times to the prescripts of the Council. So what must be resolved in this instance is the behavior and the conduct of some of the member states. And therefore, there must be other platforms at play through the multilateral platforms which must be used to engage those member states, because some of them deliberately cause wars. And as soon as you cause wars, citizens are going to suffer. People will not be able to access water. They can't access health services. They can't access education. They can't access transport. They can't access the right to associate freely as human beings. and they can't exercise their other rights, like making sure that democracies are deepened in their own countries, because there are wars in the world which are unprovokingly concocted by other member states. So the most important thing, as I say, is for the Council to understand that there are other ancillary bodies of the United Nations which must assist the Council in achieving its strategic objectives. If the United Nations Security Council is not going to prevail over some member states which are causing harm to the free movement of people, association of people, economy, stability, and so on, then the Council will not succeed in achieving its objectives. So members of the Council have to come together to make sure that there are solutions to some of these problems. In the same context, here in the African continent, we've got some of the instabilities like Sudan, Congo, and so on. It is important for the African Union, because member states within the African Union are affiliates to the Council. It's important. For instance, during the Africa Month, member states within the African continent must make sure that one of the things they do is to commit and practically act in a way that demonstrates their total commitment to the Council itself. In that way, we can then bring about stability in the African continent, because it doesn't matter the extent to which you'll have the capital to amass resources for matters of defense. If you do not make sure that member states work together, they collaborate, and they agree on how we must bring about stability, there will be no stability, and therefore the Council will not succeed to achieve its stated objectives. As I say, it doesn't mean that through some osmosis from heaven, South Africa will on its own singularly be able to, because it's a chairperson, be able to achieve the intended objectives of the Council.
What message would South Africa like to send to the international community, Chairperson, in this time around as it takes the seat? Once again, it has served on the Council before, taking from that experience and maybe looking at what it can do differently for the 2026-2028 term. What is its message?
South Africa has been there since 2006, and I think we have learned our lessons. Our message is a very simple one to the world. No member state will be able to achieve working alone. And no member state will succeed if we don't work through established global institutions of governance, the United Nations, all its related bodies. And if we do not adhere to multilateralism, we will not succeed. If we don't make sure that all conflicts and differences in the world are resolved through engagement, discussions, and using democratic instruments at our disposal, we will not succeed in achieving. So our message is a very simple one. Universities must play their role in doing empirical research on these matters, so the subject matters of the Council are properly researched. We don't thumb suck, and we don't use evidence that is not tested. Secondly, member states, through their democratic governments, must always discuss this matter. Thirdly, involve the community, because anything that is not people-centered is bound to fail, is bound to face challenges. So involve the people at all material times. Give people feedback. Explain to people what do these institutions mean, how people can use such institutions to advance their cause and respect institutions of governance globally. If you work outside the institutions of multilateralism, like the US is doing, you're not going to achieve anything. For instance, we now have impact of global warming, and the United States of America doesn't recognize the protocols that are arrived at in as far as in issues of environmental consent. It means there will be calamities that other nations are going to face as a consequence of such an irresponsible decision. So it is our hope that member states that are stronger, like the United Nations, the G7, will come to the party and make sure that they support not only South Africa, but work with all other member states to achieve the objectives of the Council.
Great. Chairperson, re a leboga for nako ya gago gape. And thanks again also for your valuable insights. We're going to have to leave this conversation here for now. Thank you to Chairperson of South Africa's Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation, Supra Mahumapelo, speaking to us about South Africa's return to the UN Human Rights Council for the 2026-2028 term.
The whole population of Africa